Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are going to dive into our next lesson. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. We're going to be looking at lesson 4 today, which is building expertise on animal defense mechanisms. What we're really going to focus on today, though, is we're going to do another close read. Sometimes close reads can be a little difficult. Sometimes it's a challenge to go back in the text and find the answers. So we're going to practice that one more time today with another piece of reading from your animal behavior and animal defenses book. So if you want to make sure you have that out, as well as your research notebook or just your workbook, make sure you have that out as well. So go ahead and make sure you have both those things out. I'm going to tell you what page in your workbook we're focusing on, and then we will get started. So you are going to be on, I believe, page 18 in your workbook. So make sure you're on page 18. Yeah, 18 in your workbook, and then you'll also need your animal behavior and animal defenses book. So we are not doing that, so I'm going to skip that really quick. We are going to review our learning targets for today. So what you're going to do at some point, what we're going to do today is I can paraphrase information presented in a read aloud on animal defense mechanisms. So that's something that you're going to do with your Venom book. And then I can determine the main idea of a text and explain how it's supported by key details. This is something that you're going to work on in your class after you do your close read. So you'll do your close read with me, and then both of these learning targets you're actually going to focus on during class. So here we go. We're going to read A Life in Hiding. Like I said, that is going to be in your animal defense and animal behavior book. So we are practicing just like last time we did this. We are practicing going back in the text to find the questions, and then we're going to also talk with others about what we have, about our answers that we've found and if they match what our friends have. So those are going to be our two goals for today. This is the book you are going to need, and you are going to be on page 11. Page 11. It starts kind of towards the middle of the bottom of the page, and A Life in Hiding is actually the heading of this section. So this is going to be what we're using in our research notebook. Like I told you, page 18 and page 19 as well. So we're going to be looking at 18 and 19 today. We're going to do a close read. We are going to dive back into our reader and find our answers, and we are going to knock this out of the ballpark. So what I want you to do is, before we do anything else, make sure you're on page 11. It'll go on pages 11 and 12. Let's see, you have all of that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just read it once. I'm going to guide you through the close read, but before we do anything else, we're just going to read it over one time so we can make sure we know what we're reading about. You guys are going to have the opportunity to work with a partner, which is pretty awesome. So if your teacher lets you for this close read, you're going to work with a partner in order to discuss your answers to your questions, and as well as what you've written down in your workbook. Okay? You've already read this text. In lesson 2, we did Lying Low on pages 10 and 11. Lesson 3, sorry. We read the text in lesson 2. We did Lying Low in lesson 3. So we're going to read this once whole group. You guys are going to follow me along, and then we're going to break it down by paragraph, kind of like we did the other one. So you don't need a pencil or anything like that right now. All you need is your book in front of you. So, A Life in Hiding. Here we go. A variety of species go to the extreme. They spend most of their lives in hiding. Over millions of years, they have adapted to surviving in habitats that keep them under cover. Many kinds of clams, for example, bury into sandy or muddy beaches. Some species live just under the surface, while others dig deeply. A large clam called a geoduck can bury itself 3 feet 1 meter below the surface. By burrowing, a clam protects itself from being washed away by waves, drying out in the sun, and being an easy target for predators. It does not need to leave its hiding place to find food. Instead, the clam opens its paired shells and reaches up through the sand with a body part called a siphon. The siphon takes in water, which the clam filters to extract particles of food. If the clam senses vibrations rippling through the sand, it quickly pulls in its siphon. Vibrations may mean a predator is investigating its hiding spot. The clam also may burrow more deeply to escape. Some clams can dig quickly. The razor clam can move 9 inches or 22 centimeters in 1 minute. Other animals find safety in living underground too. Earthworms spend much of the day burrowing through the soil. If caught by a bird's probing beak, an earthworm struggles to resist being yanked out of the ground. It grabs onto the walls of its burrows with bristles that line its sides. The worm's hind end also bulges to help clamp it in place. A mole digging through the earth can send earthworms scuttling out of the soil. Moles eat earthworms and even store them for later, biting them and then stuffing them into the holes in their tunnels. A mole rarely needs to poke its head above ground. There, an owl, fox, or weasel might pounce on it. All right, so we're going to go back. I want you to flip back to page 11. We are just going to focus on paragraph 1. Okay, so I want you to really quickly reread paragraph 1 with your partner, and then we're going to answer the first question. And I'm going to try and type today in these boxes. I have an idea. So you go ahead and reread that. And when you are done, we will answer the first question. Alrighty, you should have been able to answer that read that first paragraph pretty quickly. So what I want you to do is I want you to put your finger on the first sentence of the paragraph. And I want you to reread that. Oh, wait, hold on. Before we do that, let's do the easier thing first. Look at question 1. Question 1 says, what is the title of this section? So that we should be able to do. Easy peasy. What is the title of the section? So I'm going to actually go ahead and type that in there with you. And go ahead and shout out the title of that section. We've been talking about it a bunch. Good. You should have a life in hiding. That should be the title of the section, right? We know that. We've been reading it. We've been talking about it. Now what I want you to do is I want you to put your finger on that first sentence of the paragraph, and we're going to reread the sentence aloud. It says, a variety of species go to the extreme. They spend most of their lives in hiding. So before we even answer question 2, what do you think it means to go to the extreme? If you're going to the extreme in something, what might that mean? I want you to turn and talk to your partner and see if they have some answers for you. All right, let's hear what some people had to say. Go ahead and shout out some answers. What does it mean to go to the extreme? Good. I like what people are saying. If you don't want to share, maybe just share again with your partner. If you're going to the extreme with something, you are being over the top and excessive. So that means like you're doing something all out, like totally crazy. If you're going to do it to the extreme, you're going to do it to it, and you're not going to have any issues with it. So if we look at question 2, it says, according to the text, what is extreme about the way that some animals live? Well, if I am looking back at my text and I'm looking at my first paragraph, it says a variety of species go to the extreme. They spend most of their lives in hiding. So there's one extreme. Or they adapt to survive in their habitat. Well, I'm not just going to copy out of the book. So I'm going to say they change over time to survive. So what is an extreme, ooh, my bad. What is an extreme way that animals live? Let's see if I can get it in here. Alrighty, here we go. So the first one it says is that some animals spend their whole lives in hiding. And then since there were two, I'm going to put or. Some animals change over time to survive in their habitat. So I'm not using the exact words from the book, but I am getting that information from the book. Sorry, let me try this again. Okay, that looks better. So, what are extreme ways that species live? They spend their whole lives in hiding, or they change over time to survive in their habitat. Very good. So, because our section is called A Life in Hiding, I want you to think about this because you're going to need to know this when you do your main idea. What this paragraph that we just read, it introduces a life in hiding, right? So let's ask ourselves, if it's called A Life in Hiding, what is this section going to be about? Well, based off what I've read so far and hearing the teacher read it one time, I know that this is going to be about how animals spend their lives in hiding. So it told me what they do. Now it's going to give me examples of how they do that. So I want you to look at paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 in your book. So we've got the paragraph that says many kinds of clams, then by burrowing, and then if the clam senses vibrations through the sand. We're going to reread these 3 paragraphs, and then we're going to talk about question 3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start rereading. You can follow along with me. I'm starting with many kinds of clams. Many kinds of clams, for example, burrow into sandy or muddy beaches. Some species live just under the surface while others dig deeply. A large clam called the, and I said it wrong earlier, it's actually a gooey duck, and I only know that from a cooking show I watch, but a large clam called the gooey duck can bury itself 3 feet, 1 meter below the surface. By burrowing, a clam protects itself from being washed away by waves, drying out in the sun, and being an easy target for predators. It does not need to leave its hiding place to find food. Instead, the clam opens its paired shells and reaches up through the sand with a body part called a siphon. The siphon takes in water, which the clam filters to extract the particles of food. If the clam senses vibrations rippling through the sand, it quickly pulls in its siphon. Vibrations may mean a predator is investigating its hiding spot. The clam may also burrow more deeply to escape. Some clams can dig quickly. The razor clam can move 9 inches, 22 centimeters in 1 minute. So I'm going to stop there really quickly, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we just read. So obviously, what animal was focused on in this section? Yell it out for me. You guys should be able to give me this one. Super easy. What animal did we just read about? Good. A clam. We read about different clams and what they do. Very good. We have the word burrow in the text a million times in this section. I want you to turn and talk to your partner and tell them what you think a burrow is. And I want you to try and make a definition using your own words. If you need to pause if you need to pause the video at this time, that's fine. If you want to talk, jot it down. And we're going to talk about what a burrow is when you guys come back. Okay. A burrow. If you have something, or to burrow means to dig a hole or a tunnel in the ground, right? We think about different animals who have burrows. And how do I know this? Well, it tells me that clams burrow into beaches and that they dig deeply. I've seen clams do this before. When I was little and we would go on vacation at the beach, we would actually try and dig up the clams as they were burrowing. We would try and catch them. So I know that when they're burrowing, they're digging a tunnel into the ground because I've actually seen that happen before. So I want you to look at question 3. Now that we've kind of talked about what burrowing is and what the animal is, it says, which sentence in paragraph 3 best supports the idea that this animal spends most of its time in hiding? So I'm going to go back and look. I found it. If you look at paragraph 3, maybe you've talked with your partner and you guys have an idea, but that very first sentence in paragraph 3 best supports the idea that this animal spends most of its time underground, because it says it does not need to leave its hiding place to find food. And that was the first sentence in paragraph 3. So it tells me that the question says, which sentence in paragraph 3 best supports the idea that this animal spends most of its time in hiding? Well, the first paragraph. If this guy doesn't have to, the first sentence. If this guy doesn't have to leave its hole to find food, then it's going to spend most of its time there, because it's definitely a prey for a lot of animals on the beach. Seagulls, maybe some underwater animals. So it's going to stay in its hiding place as long as possible. So that's how I know that it spends most of its time in hiding, because it does not have to leave to find food. So going along with that, if I look at question 4, it says, on the chart below, record 3 ways that spending most of the day in hiding helps the clam survive. You can use words or pictures to show your thinking. So what does that mean? That means that you do not have to write something. You could draw a picture if that's easier for you. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and pause your video and take some time to work on this with your partner. You have to find 3 examples that shows us that spending most of the day in hiding helps the clam survive. So take some time to do that, and when you come back, we'll look over them together and we'll see if our answers match. Alrighty, so hopefully you paused your video and you are, sorry guys, and you are ready to go. So I'm ready to go if I can get my computer to work. Yay. All right, here we go. My first reason that I found was hiding helps clams from being washed away by waves. Then my second reason that I found was hiding keeps clams from drying out in the sun. Hiding keeps clams from drying out in the sun. And my third reason, my last reason that I have that it keeps clams from being an easy target for predators. Hiding keeps clams from being an easy target for predators. So those are going to be my 3 reasons. Okay, now, where did I find those 3 reasons? Well, if I go back to the first sentence in paragraph 3, it tells me that. It says, by burrowing, a clam protects itself from being washed away by waves, drying out in the sun, and being an easy target for predators. So all of that was right there in that very first sentence. So now that we've done question 4, okay, we are going to go ahead and move on to question 5, which means I need to delete all this writing. So here's the deal, guys. If you did not get all of these answers, feel free to pause the video and make sure that you have these answers written down. It's going to take me a second to delete them, so just give me a second. And then if you already have all the answers, while I'm sitting here deleting all of these, I want you to look at question 5, read it aloud, or you could read it aloud with your partner, you could read it to yourself, but I want you to go ahead and read question 5 and see if you can look for that answer. Alrighty. All right, so let's focus and move on. Now it's probably not going to let me. There we go. Let's focus on questions 5 through 9. Okay, so it says, in your own words, write the main idea of these paragraphs. So remember, we talked about what a main idea was. A main idea is the most important thing or things, depending on how long your text is, that the author wants you to know from reading the text. So question 5 is 2 parts. First, it says the main idea. Then it says the details. So what I want you to do is I want you to take some time with your partner to go over the main idea and details of these three the main idea of the paragraphs that we just read. Sorry, I just want to make sure I was telling you right. So if you think back earlier to when we first started reading, the first question we talked about was, what do you think this section is going to be about? So you've already kind of told me that. What we think it's going to be about, we think it's going to be about creatures or animals who hide to survive. We had talked about that earlier. So you had to make sure that whatever you think your main idea is, or what you think this section is mostly about, that you can have details, 3 details to support that main idea. So you are going to work with your partner to answer these questions. So you're definitely going to need to share your pause, not share. You're definitely going to need to pause your video to work on these, and then we'll come back together and talk about them. Alrighty, guys. So you should have paused your video. If you're not ready to come back, obviously you just pause it again and keep working. Now, in this section, it didn't give us the main idea right off the bat like it did in Lying Low, right? In Lying Low, the very first sentence told us what the main idea was. In this section, you kind of have to infer it a little bit. So we're going to kind of talk about that. So everyone's main ideas might be a little bit different. So don't feel like just because the one I write in isn't the one that you write in, it's wrong. This is just kind of what I pulled from it. So for my main idea of this paragraph, of these paragraphs, that text is way too big. And it's definitely not super cute. So let's just do this. Let's make it a pretty color. Okay, here we go. So what I said the main idea of the paragraph was, in my own words, of these paragraphs that we just read, only the first 3 we've read, I said the main idea was clams spend most of their lives in hiding. Now, you might have a completely different main idea, and that's totally fine. This is just the one I'm using because this is the one that we kind of just talked about, and I knew that I could find 3 details to support my thinking. What? Where did that go? Hold on. All right, let's try this again. There it is. Okay. Then it says, list 3 details to support your thinking. Okay, well, we just talked about that. So my first detail was, by burrowing, clams protect themselves from being washed away, drying out, and avoiding predators. So notice how I kind of put that whole thing in my own words. I didn't necessarily use exactly what the book said. And this is all one detail because remember, it was 3 paragraphs. So I have other details that I need to make sure that I'm adding. Okay, so that's kind of hard to see. Give me a second. All right. My next detail that I'm going to use is it does not need to leave its hiding place to find food. We discussed that earlier as well. And my last detail, I'm going to use that last, I think it was paragraph 2, 3, 4 that we talked about, that clam. My third detail is that clams can tell when a predator is nearby using the vibrations in the sand and digging deeper. So that is going to be my main idea and my 3 details. So I'm just trying to make it so you can see it. But in your own words, what was the main idea of these paragraphs that we just read? Well, I knew we read about a clam and we read about how they spend most of their lives in hiding. And then I gave 3 details to support that. 1, a clam burrows to protect themselves from being washed away, drying out, and avoiding predators. 2, it doesn't need to leave its hiding place to find food. And 3, it can detect a predator using the vibrations in the sand and digging deeper. So remember that the main idea wasn't necessarily stated in that first sentence, okay? You had to kind of infer it by thinking about what you read in those chunks of those paragraphs. And then you had to figure out how you could connect that with clams. So this main idea might not have been as easy. You might have had one that's completely different than mine. And you will have time to share those out with your class. If yours is different, your teachers can give you a little more time. But remember that as you're reading a text, you're always thinking about what the text is about. You've got to gather details to confirm what you're thinking and to stay focused. Without those details, you are not going to stay focused. So if you need to write that down, go ahead and take a minute. You might need to pause it. I feel like it's going to go away when I move. Oh, it didn't go away. Yay. Okay, so there are your answers for that one. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next paragraph that we have not gotten to, which is paragraph 5. Paragraph 5 starts with other animals find safety. So I want you to read this independently. I'm going to read it in my head while you guys read it. And when I'm done, we'll go ahead and start answering questions. So take a second and read it independently. Alrighty. So what animal are we focusing on in this paragraph? Hopefully you guys know that we're looking at earthworms. And then again, how do the earthworms survive? Well, it kind of tells me, it says that an earthworm spends much of the day burrowing through the soil. So how does it how does it survive? It burrows through the soil underground. So look at question 6. We just talked about how it burrows underground. Which sentences best support the idea that the animal's body allows it to spend most of its time hiding? So I'm going to go back and look. I know it's not the first or second sentence, so I'm going to keep looking. Okay, it starts talking about if an earthworm is being attacked. So the first thing that I know is it grabs onto the walls of its burrow with bristles that line its sides. And then it talks about how the worm's hind end, also bulges to help clamp itself in place. So if you've ever played with an earthworm, Maybe you never have. I did when I was little because I had woods next to my house, so we always dug them up. You can kind of, now that I've read about this, I can actually envision that in my head because I've seen it happen. You kind of see them get a little bit bigger so it can kind of stay where it is, or how it kind of gets stuck onto the walls of the dirt because it doesn't want to be taken away. So those are the two sentences that are going to support that idea. But I want you to just keep in mind that in those sentences, there was a lot of other information, right? Those were full, complete sentences. I only wrote in the parts that supported that its body allows it to spend its time hiding. So I did not write about, oh, if a bird attacks, if this happens, if that happens. No, I just picked out the important information that matches what the question is asking me. So that's the whole point of a close read, is you want to make sure that you are just picking out that information that answers the questions, because you want to be specific and you want to be focused. So just something to think about. So look at question 7. It says, record one way that spending most of the day in hiding helps the earthworm survive. You can use words or you could draw pictures. So take a second and look at that with your partner. This might be something that you have to infer on this one. Okay, so what is the purpose of the earthworm spending most of the day in hiding? How does that help that earthworm survive? So if you need to pause your video, go ahead and do so. Come back and we will discuss our answer. And you are working with a partner. Okay, so when I went back and reread and I kind of inferred and I thought, what are we talking about when we're reading this section of a life in hiding? Well, I know we're talking about how animals are hiding to protect themselves to survive. So for this one, I'm going to say staying underground helps an earthworm hide from it. Uh-oh. Hold on, I don't know what just happened. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, hold on, guys. What is going on? Give me a second. My slides are being weird. Okay, hold on, guys. Sorry. Technical difficulty. Let's try this. Woohoo! Okay, here we go. So I am going to be writing that staying underground helps an earthworm hide from its predators. So how does it help it survive? Well, if it's hiding from its predators, that's a pretty good way of surviving. So that was kind of what I pulled based on the other question that we had answered already and what we read in the book. So our last paragraph, we are going to read. We're going to reread paragraph 6. So that's the very last paragraph. It starts with a mole digging. So what I want you to do is read this in your head with your partner, maybe whisper read it, and we'll come back and we will answer questions 8 and 9, and then I will tell you what you are going to do next. Okay, so again, what is this paragraph about? Now we're talking about moles. And how does a mole survive? Well, I see a common theme here. A mole survives by staying underground to hide from its predators. So we're going to do kind of like the same thing that we did in 6 and 7. We're going to do that same thing for 8 and 9. So 8 says, which sentence best supports the idea that the animal spends most of its time in hiding? So how do I know, if I go back in that paragraph, what tells me that a mole spends most of its time in hiding? See if you can find that sentence. All right, if you said the last sentence, you are totally on track. The last sentence says, a mole rarely needs to poke its head above ground. There, comma, an owl, oh my goodness, owl, fox, or weasel might pounce on it or jump on it, right? To pounce on something is to jump on something. So our last question is the same as question 7. Record one way that spending most of its day in hiding helps the mole survive. You could use words or pictures. Take a second and see if you can find the answer to that. We'll come back together, talk about what we wrote. Okay, how do I know that the mole spending most of its day in hiding helps it survive? Well, it said that moles eat earthworms. And because they eat the earthworms and the earthworms are underground, oh my goodness, spending time in hiding, let's see, helps them survive because they can store and eat worms. That's pretty much what that paragraph was about, how the mole stores and eats worms in order to survive. So, with that being said, if you flip your page in your workbook, now that you have all these answers, remember you can always pause to collect the answers and then come back to this. But if you flip to page 20 in your workbook, now you are going to focus on figuring out what the main idea of this section was. Okay, so that is your next goal. Your next goal is to figure out what the main idea of this section was, and then adding the supporting details. Now, when I say section, it's the whole section about a life in hiding. So I want you to think about that because you learned about 3 different animals in this section and they're hiding. So hint, hint, that could be your 3 details. So I want you to really make sure that you take into consideration everything that we read in these 2 pages. Those are going to help you with your main idea and your supporting details. So that is something that you are going to be doing when we get off of here, and then discussing with your class, your teacher. That's the next step after your close read. So what I did was I kind of set you up with all the information that you need for your close read. Now it's your turn to go ahead and figure out what the main idea and the supporting details are. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. When we meet tomorrow, we will be digging in a little bit deeper to some of the other points in the animal behavior book, in the venom book, and we will just keep moving along with all these different animals we're reading about and all the different ways that help them survive. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.